fire, this great big black puff of smoke, and then all hell broke loose. I mean, they came at us with 187 planes. How they ever did that and didn't run into each other, I don't know, because every place you looked, there was an airplane coming or going, you know. I mean, that's how it was. And you says, well, what are you going to do? You got no place to run, and you got no place to hide. You're going to have to do what you know you're trained to do. My gun, they hadn't even announced yet, man, your battle stations. We hadn't called general quarters or anything yet, but it didn't take us that long. The first thing I did was I put a steel plate in the porthole in my gun compartment because I was trained to do that. Then I went over by my gun, which was the trainer on number 3, and that's the compartment I was living in. I went over to that gun and I trained it out. Well, when you're going to battle stations in the Navy, you go forward and up on the starboard side and down and aft on the port side so you don't run into each other. And that's what the people were doing. They were running down the gallery deck and they were ducking under this barrel of this gun I had trained out. And when I saw that, I realized, hey, we ain't gonna shoot that thing in here anyhow. It's a surface weapon. And so I trained it back in, and then I went into the midship casemate, and there was a guy there by the name of Dutch Holberline, and he was another guy that had been on the Maryland since it was commissioned. And he was sitting there with his knees under his chin, with his rear end backed up against the locker, you know, and sitting there, and I said, well, now what are you going to do now, Dutch? He said, I don't know what you're going to do. He says, but I'm going to stay here until somebody tells me what I got to do. I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go up on a boat deck and see if I can give the boys a hand on the anti-aircraft battery. Because I knew we couldn't shoot our weapons. There's no use for me to stay there not knowing what's going on. So I went up on the boat deck, and when I got up there, I think everybody in the Navy was up there because we were stepping on top of each other. We had so many people up there. But we did get the covers off, and we did get the ready box open, and we got some weapons, and we got things going and shooting as best we could. And that's what we did until the last airplane decided he was going home and then left us, you know. And he left us about, I don't know, 10 o'clock, the first wave, and then the second wave somewhere. I didn't realize what time it was till it was 2:30 in the afternoon. And then everything was on fire and burned up, and dead people and wounded people and all kinds of trash, everything laying around, you know. Well, as we got a little time, we squared that all away. We picked up all the empties and got it squared away, so just in case we're going to do this some more yet. Maryland got hit with 2 bombs. She got 1 bomb hit on, well, it really didn't hit the forecastle. The forecastle was covered with a canvas cover, and there's a metal jack line runs from the foretop all the way out to the jack staff. The bomb came down and it hit that metal cable and exploded before it hit the deck. There was no hole in the deck on the Maryland when that first bomb went off, because it didn't hit the deck. It exploded above the deck, which killed my division officer. My junior division officer was in the foretop. A piece of shrapnel came through there, bounced off the director and hit him in the jugular vein. If he hadn't ducked, if he'd have been standing straight up, he'd have probably got a piece of shrapnel in his belly, and that's about all he'd have got. But it hit him right in the jugular vein, and he bled to death, right up there in the foretop. And that was after the Okie rolled over. The second bomb hit the Maryland on the port bow below the waterline, knocked out our forward air compressor and our forward switchboard. We had no power to run our ammunition hoist to bring ammunition up from the magazines, and we had no air compression, so we could ram those guns with that air pressure. So we had to ram our guns by hand. And that's how we fought that Battle of Pearl, without any air or any electricity. And we formed a human chain all the way from the magazines, which is about 3 decks below the main deck, all the way on up to the boat deck, which is 2 decks above the boat deck, above the main deck, to haul that ammunition, hand over from one guy to the next guy until we got it up on a gun. And that's how we did it. Now, when the Okie rolled, I was gone forward. We hadn't been hit yet because our ammunition was still coming up on a hoist. I went forward under the overhanging number 2 turret to get a round of ammunition to feed to number gun 4, which is on the port side, and the same side the Oklahoma is on. I crawled under there to get that round of ammunition, and when I went in there, a guy behind me said the Okie's listing, and by the time I went in there and got that round of ammunition and come out, the Okie was gone. That's how fast she rode. That quick. And he told me, and I went and got that round of ammunition, got back out there, the Okie wasn't there anywhere. She had completely capsized and rolled over right next to us. Now, if you look at those pictures, and you look at the California who's standing forward of us, you'll find that all of her main batteries turned out to stop it. Because she was showing her whole main side, port side, just like the Okie, but with no watertight, so they can button her up, so they can flood to maintain equilibrium. They just strained the main battery out and put them guns out there because each one of them guns weighs 60 tons apiece. And when you hung them out over the side, that kept the California from tipping over. That's why she just sank and settled at the bottom. But the Okie couldn't do that because she had no place to train her guns because she was tied up to the Maryland, so she couldn't do that. But she got hammered and she just tore loose and rolled right over, and that was it. All you could see when you looked over the side was her starboard bilge from one end to the other. And the sad part about all that is these guys are trapped in there. Now we're in there from the 7th until the 14th because we can't get out because when the Okie rolled over, she pushed us up against the mooring dock, which we call a quay, and we can't get out. We have to blow the quay forward and hook a tug on it to pull us out from behind the Okie because she's got us pushed up tight against that. We had stuff buttoned up that we couldn't get to, and then we had ships that were impossible to do anything with, like the Okie. We started out there, instantly we tried cutting the hull. We set some cork on fire, and it smoldered and smothered everybody in the compartment before we got to them. Then when you pull a cover off, or we finally got some chipping hammers over at Navy Yard, and we cut the rivets off because those old ships were all riveted together. There was no welding done on those ships. They were all riveted. You cut the plate loose, and what do you do when you pull the plate loose? If there's water in there and you let the air out, water comes in, the air goes out, and you drowned everybody. That's that way. But we did manage to get 32 people out of that hull alive while we were doing this. And we did that. We had a crew over there constantly. And we had crews out there picking up and taking care of those guys that couldn't take care of themselves and all this stuff. We always had somebody, and we had working parties going in all directions, you know. And every day we had somebody going someplace until we went over to the Navy Yard, and then we spent some time putting our own ship together, and then we got underway on the 20th. We left Pearl Harbor on the 20th of December. We didn't know what was coming. They could have. But the Japanese made their first mistake. And it was a big one. People don't understand it, but you know what? They lost that war that first day. But it took us 2.5 years to show them that they did lose that war that first day. They came over there. We had no carriers there. They were out on, one went to Midway, and we only had 3 carriers in the Pacific. One was in dry dock in Bremerton, Washington, Saratoga. When we left there in July, they were in a dry dock in Bremerton, and then there was the Lexington and the Enterprise and Lexington. Well, we went north. because it got pretty rough and pretty cold and miserable up there where we were. And then we went over to Bremerton, and we arrived in Bremerton on New Year's Eve. And boy, you got a bunch of young fellas, we're all raring to go. We're going to go ashore and have a whoopee good time, you know. And we get over there and holy smokes, they got barrage balloons up, and they got guys with bayonets and rifles walking the streets and down the road. It looks like these people are at war. we just come from it, you know. And so it was an interesting time. And I'm sure they were still jumping from one foot to the other, trying to figure out how they're going to do this, you know, what they're going to do to get this done, you know. So it was a very trying time, but not for us bunch of kids. All we wanted to do, go to hell, go ashore and raise a little hell, you know. But you know what they say about you get drunk and disorderly and terrorize the natives. We stayed in Bremerton till about February, and then they didn't move the fleet back out in the Pacific. They held the battle fleet back on the West Coast. And then we did patrol work. We went all the way down to Christmas Islands and taking tramp steamers or whatever. We were moving as much stuff as we could over south into New Zealand and Australia. We were doing mostly patrol work, going out and checking for submarines, checking for, see that nobody attacks our transports that were moving. We moved the 32nd and the 41st right out of West Coast, San Francisco, and took them down to Australia, you know, and they were both in Australia before they went to New Guinea. We had the Coral Sea Battle down there, which was in April of that first 1942. And then we had the Midway Battle in 42. And at that time, the Maryland and 4 other old battle wagons were way up in the Aleutians, where the sun don't go down. Well, they didn't really know what the Japanese were up to, you know. We knew they were going, we had broke the code, and we knew they were going to Midway, but they had already they had bombed Dutch Harbor, and they had put some troops on Attu and Kiska, and we were up there just in case the Japanese broke out and they were had some other idea where they were going to go. And that's why we were up there. Us and 4 other old battle wagons, you know. And then we steamed back to Pearl. But we were in Hawaii when Jimmy Doolittle went under the bridge there with all them 16 the Mitchell bombers, them 25s. We saw them go. We stood there. I was tied up to Pier 7 in the Embarcadero. We stood there on the fantail and we watched them guys go, and we talked about, well, they must be, the Hornet was going out with this load of Mitchells. We thought they were hauling some Army planes over to the Pacific someplace. And then about 3 weeks later in the San Francisco Chronicle, here's an article about how Jimmy Doolittle went over there and bombed Tokyo. That's the first thing we knew about it. But we saw them go. But we didn't know that's where they were going when they did that. Funny thing about the war, you know, you only know really what's going on around you. There isn't anybody around starting to tell you where they're doing something someplace else. You don't find that out until maybe you got involved in it and somebody else you met that told you that that's where they were or what they were doing. You know? And you hear the rumors and that. You know, Honolulu got bombed. You don't think the Japs came all the way over there to waste a bomb in Honolulu. That was some of our own stuff, and I saw that happen. You take a round of ammunition out of a can, and you put it in a fuse pot loader. Then the first loader takes it out of a fuse pot loader and puts it in the gun. She goes out there a couple of 1,000 feet, whammo. But if you don't set that fuse, that baby goes out of there, and Honolulu is only 7 miles away. That old projectile's gonna go off when it hits them. And that's how those people got killed in Honolulu. It wasn't the Japanese that come along and strafed them or shot them up or anything like that. They didn't waste their time on that stuff. They were too busy with the military. They didn't want nothing to do with them civilians. They make a big story out of a lot of things that's really not. Basically, the truth, you know. We were down in Guadalcanal, but we would have been in the second battle of Santa Cruz Islands, but it never happened. We had 5 old battle wagons and a few destroyers with us, and the Japs were coming at us with 40 ships. We went to battle stations about 10 o'clock at night, and we didn't secure from battle stations till about 4 o'clock in the morning. And then we set condition 2, that's half on and half off, you know. And that was for a couple of days. But the Japanese came down and they saw what we had, and they didn't want to waste their time on us, and they went back up north. So they broke it off. Otherwise, we would have had a second battle of the Santa Cruz Island when we lost the Wasp and the Hornet down there. And you know what that was. This was all part of that on-the-job training I'm telling you about. We didn't know how to fight. We didn't know how to fight at night. The Japanese knew how to fight at night. The Japanese knew a lot of things that we didn't know. So it's pretty much on-the-job training, because you know, you do something and you screw up. You say, well, we can't do that anymore. So we're going to have to find another way of getting it done. And that's what we did. That's what's so good about America, and I don't know if people got enough sense to realize it. What a tremendous thing it is to be born in America. I can't say enough for Americans. Because when there's something to be done and somebody has to do it, somebody comes up with a way of getting it done. They don't have to stand there and wait for somebody to tell them what to do next. We figure it out for ourselves, and we go ahead and we do it. 42 and into early 40, February 43, before it's all over with. From the 7th day of August in 42 on to about the 13th day of February, before that battle is secured. Now this is our territory, and we've kicked them out of here. Well, in November the 20th and 43, we were the flagship. We were the guys that had Colonel Carlson and Schmidt and all them guys. They were all in Maryland. They never did that again either, because when we'd fire our main battery, we'd knock out our communications, and the beach couldn't talk to Maryland, and the Maryland couldn't talk to the beach. We were going to Bayou Island. Yeah, Bayou Island. I was on Gun 5.